Double-digit thousands stacks.
In this video, I'm going to answer the question of how you can make the NBA. I'm going to break it down into several categories arranged by height. For each height range, I'm going to give what I consider to be necessary skills or traits to make the NBA at that height. Some of these skills are ones that you can work on, like shooting or ball handling. Others are harder to improve and are more limited by your genetic potential, like your vertical leap. I'm basing these skills on the skills of current NBA players at that height range, and as you'll see, there are multiple roles to fulfill, especially for players in the middle height ranges. Obviously, there is no way to guarantee that you make it to the NBA, but hopefully this video gives you an idea as to how you might be able to achieve that goal. While I'm not an NBA coach, I think my opinion on this topic is insightful, and I'd love to hear what you think in response, so leave a comment below after you watch the video. The shortest players currently in the NBA are Isaiah Thomas of the Boston Celtics and Kay Felder of the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're both listed at 5 feet 9 inches tall. Because players often measure their height with shoes on, we can take about an inch off this height to ascertain our minimum height to make the NBA. Therefore, for the first category, the range will be 5 feet 8 inches to 5 feet 11 inches. Now, there's a tiny chance that you could do it as someone who is under 5 feet 8, but honestly, your efforts may be better focused on another sport where height is less of a factor. There are many reasons why there are so few short players in the NBA. One of them is to do with the demographics of the population. As you can see, at 5'9", you would occupy the United States average height for men. From this graph, you can see that there are more people at your height than there are at any other height. This also means that there are more basketball players at your height than any other height, especially when you are young and your future height is still undetermined. More basketball players at the same height means more competition to fill the NBA role that you're trying to perform. The intense level of competition at this height means that undersized point guards essentially have to be complete players in order to have a chance to make the NBA. Offensively, you have to have a filled out skill set. We see this with current undersized NBA guards like Isaiah Thomas. You need to be able to shoot the three-pointer, have an excellent handle, as well as have enough vision and passing ability to initiate an offense. In order to be able to drive to the basket successfully, you need to be more than an elite athlete. You need to be world class. Kay Felder recorded a 44-inch vertical leap at the 2016 NBA Combine, putting him in that category. Isaiah Thomas can dunk at only 5 feet 8, which equates to a vertical leap of over 40 inches, even with long arms. One other short NBA guard, who's not currently in the NBA but played recently, is Nate Robinson. There's no official vertical leap on record for him, but looking at these videos of him dunking easily at the age of 33, it's safe to assume that he also has a vertical well over 40 inches. Therefore, explosive leaping ability and elite quickness and speed are absolutely necessary to make the NBA as a player below 6 foot tall. One of the reasons that so few people under 6 foot are successful in the NBA is because of the natural limit on defense. As good as Isaiah Thomas is offensively, he's still a defensive liability. With good effort and defensive fundamentals, combined with elite quickness to stay in front of other NBA guards, you might be able to make the NBA. One key skill is being able to avoid getting caught in screens, because switching onto a big man at this height is almost a guaranteed score for the other team at the NBA level. Something else that's common among smaller guards in the NBA right now is muscle mass. Felder, Thomas, and Robinson are all heavily set, more so than taller players at other positions. See Kevin Durant as a prime example of the opposite. The extra body mass prevents these players from being pushed around on both ends of the floor. When attempting to prevent post-ups, a common occurrence for players at this height, extra weight equates to extra strength, which improves your defense. On offense, the weight helps players like Isaiah Thomas to maintain balance despite heavy body contact with larger players. If you are this height, or you project to be around this height, then you're in a slightly better spot than people who are below 6 foot. However, this is still an objectively near impossible task for most people. The multiple traits that hold true for the undersized players carry through to this height as well. There's one difference here though, which is that you might be able to get away with some minor deficiencies if you have an exceptional talent in one area. For example, Steph Curry is listed at 6 feet 3 inches, which makes him about 6 feet 2 inches without shoes. Curry is known for being the greatest shooter we've ever seen. If you don't believe me, then watch my video explaining why, which I'll put in the description. His game-altering ability to shoot from beyond the three-point line allows him to be in the NBA, despite not being an Olympic-level athlete in terms of explosiveness and strength. This is not to say that he is not athletic. In fact, it's quite the opposite. He just doesn't rely on athleticism to survive in the NBA, and most people in this height category will have to do something similar to Curry just to make the NBA. The exception would be world-class athletes, like current rookie Dennis Smith Jr., who is in this height category and relies on his 40+ inch vertical leap and quickness to make an impact as an NBA player. Another example in this category is Kyrie Irving. He's listed at 6 feet 3 inches, making him 6 feet 2 in reality. He is one of the greatest ball handlers and below-the-rim finishers that we've ever seen. His transcendent abilities in this regard allow him to make an impact in the NBA without having exceptional vision as a passer, and despite his lack of defensive intensity. This is one of the reasons why he averages a low number of assists for a point guard. The final example I'm using for this category is Patrick Beverley, a player who's listed at 6 feet 1. He's an okay NBA three-point shooter, ball handler, and facilitator, yet he still makes a difference as someone who plays with 100% effort on defense. His exceptional defensive ability allows him to be unexceptional in most other regards, apart from his athleticism. If Beverley played average defense, it would be fair to say that he would not be in the NBA, or at least would not be a starter in the NBA. To summarize, in this height range, you need to have a complete game. The difference with undersized point guards and normal-sized point guards is that normal-sized guards can afford to not be truly exceptional in every regard. In fact, if you're exceptional at one skill in particular, you can even have relatively average to below average abilities in a few areas. At this height, you will most likely play shooting guard, although there are some exceptions like current NBA rookie Lonzo Ball, who's listed at 6 feet 6 inches and plays point guard. However, someone like Ball is very rare because of his combination of height, ball handling, and vision as a passer. At the end of the day, you could only name a few current NBA players at this height who play point guard. Perhaps Sean Livingston is the next best example. On the other hand, you could name plenty of shooting guards in this height range. For the majority of people in this range, you would play shooting guard. Therefore, the necessary skills for this category are fairly simple. The number one necessity for people in this height range is three-point shooting. With the way the NBA has developed over the past decade, three-point shooting has moved from being a premium skill to an absolutely necessary one, especially for the shooting guard spot. Players like Tony Allen, who are non-shooters, at the shooting guard position have become devalued, and I think they will become extinct in the near future. The more advanced your shooting ability, the more deficiencies you can have in other aspects of your game. One of the best shooters in the NBA, Kyle Korver, is an unexceptional athlete who struggles on defense and rarely dribbles the ball more than one bounce at a time, if at all. However, he maintains an NBA roster spot over hundreds of world-class athletes at this height range who are trying to make the NBA. Why is that? His three-point shooting. With shooting the only necessary trait to make the NBA at this position, the question is, what else is important for players in this height range? Ball handling is a bonus, especially for starting NBA guards, who often take a secondary or tertiary ball handler role. I would argue that to just make the NBA at this height, you simply have to be a good enough athlete to survive on defense, provided that you bring knockdown shooting ability on the offensive end. And I don't just mean hitting open shots in practice. I mean hitting NBA threes while being heavily contested. As you can see from this current footage, many three-point shots barely make it out of the shooter's hand before being blocked. And this is the level of shooting that you must achieve to have a realistic shot at making the NBA. The small forward position is one that is littered with versatile players in today's NBA. Most of the current hardest NBA players to defend are in this height range. These include LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, and Andrew Wiggins, to name just a few. Because of the depth of versatile and dangerous scorers in this height range, Your best bet to make the NBA within this range is to play elite defense against small forwards. This requires good quickness and explosiveness. A player like Andre Roberson, who's only 6'7", has managed to start for an NBA team over the past season and during the playoffs despite being a terrible three-point shooter and having no ball handling or isolation scoring ability whatsoever. Whereas players who are shorter than this height are expected to be able to shoot, players above 6'6" are given more of a pass at the three-point line. Someone like Draymond Green, who's also 6'7", combines the previously mentioned elite defensive ability with good ball handling and passing vision. This combination is still bereft of the smaller player's vital three-point shooting, yet Draymond is still considered a top NBA player. Despite Draymond Green's rare skill set, players in this category are usually given a pass on the area of ball handling, as the point guard and shooting guard perform most of the dribbling responsibilities for NBA teams. Therefore, I would say that the only necessity is one-on-one defensive ability. While there is only one necessity, you could greatly increase your chances of making an NBA team by fulfilling the now standard 3-and-D wing role. If you can achieve a high enough level of shooting to make open three-point shots, and you combine this with elite defense as mentioned above, then you multiply your chance of making it to the NBA many times over. As the Golden State effect takes over the NBA, more and more teams will demand that their wings be able to make open threes to prevent floor spacing issues. Therefore, someone with foresight will also address their shooting ability. If you're looking to improve your three-point shooting, you should subscribe to my channel and look through my technique breakdown archives. You'll find quality analysis of good and bad shooters designed to help you improve your own shooting. Because modern NBA teams rarely play two players over 6'10" at the same time, I've decided to merge the categories of center and power forward into one. The tallest player in the NBA right now is Boban Marjanovic of the Detroit Pistons. At 7'3", he joins Kristaps Porzingis and Walter Tavares as the tallest current players by listed height. To make the NBA as a player above 6 feet 10 inches, the most important trait is mobility. Going back to our height chart, you can see that people who are above the height of 6'10" are extremely rare. Being this tall is rare, but even more rare is the ability to move quickly at this height, especially including running and jumping. While three-point shooting would be an excellent ability to have at this height range, it's definitely not a necessity. Simply being able to move your feet and move explosively is enough to make the NBA. Back to the basket skills are no longer necessary for NBA big men, as we have seen players like Marc Gasol and Brook Lopez move away from the basket to shoot more threes than ever before. Instead, a big man with speed and hops can make it to the NBA as a defensive role player. Players like this simply have to rotate to block shots in the paint and catch lobs and drop-offs inside the paint for easy finishes. Once again, being this tall gives you the luxury of not having to have an extremely developed skill set. Three-point shooting and post-up skills are really considered a luxury in today's game, and are not even utilized as much as before when considering post-up skills. This has allowed players like Rudy Gobert, DeAndre Jordan, and JaVale McGee to flourish. They lack considerable talent in one-on-one offensive situations, like a post-up or a face-up, yet they are able to contribute by playing defense, rebounding, and dunking the ball when given the opportunity. Yet to perform the role that they fill, you only need mobility and defensive awareness, which can be trained by watching film. If you are able to add three-point shooting and post-up skills to your game at this height, you may well find yourself at an NBA All-Star game in the near future, because players like this are extremely rare. People like Dirk Nowitzki, Joel Embiid, and Kristaps Porzingis have done so, but such talent is not necessary because of the lack of depth in the population over 6 feet 10. To summarize, the shorter you are, the more complete your game has to be in order to make the NBA. All positions require a standard of athleticism that may well be out of reach for most people, but they can still be improved by weightlifting and proper athletic training. At the end of the day, the majority of people watching this video are not going to be over 6 feet 6 inches and blessed with the ability to run and jump like a much smaller person. Therefore, you simply have to put in hard work and dedicate yourself to training, something that most people are also unable to do. And the final point I would like to make is that even if you dedicate yourself to train as hard as you can, the unfortunate truth is that most people simply aren't born with the genetic and physical talents required to be in the NBA. However, if you train hard and train smart, you at least give yourself a chance. Whereas if you don't give 100% effort, it's unlikely that you'll ever get close to an NBA roster.